Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. Now, Jesus is walking along the road. He's actually going through Jericho, and on the way out, they encounter a blind man named Bartimaeus. And he's sitting there on the roadside begging. And I think about that classic explanation of what a Christian is. That a Christian is simply one beggar telling another beggar where to go for food and for healing. And so he's begging, and he knows that Jesus is coming by. I mean, he doesn't see him, he hears about it, but yet he sees Jesus as the Messiah, because he cries out, Son of David. Now, Son of David is a messianic title that we see in the Gospel of Mark and especially in Matthew, and it's used by those who are crying out for healing. And what's interesting is that the crowd around Jesus don't like this interruption. Hey, you're messing with our time of hanging out with Jesus. Quit bothering us with this I need to be healed stuff. But he shouts all the more. And what does he shout? Son of David, have mercy on me. And so even though he won't stop, Jesus stops and says, call the man to me. And so now the crowd is like, oh, now you can be a part of what we're doing. And, cheer up, they say, cheerio, get up. And so he does. He springs to his feet and he comes to Jesus. And Jesus asks the question, what do you want from me? Now, what I think is funny is that, this blind man, he was able to see that Jesus was the Messiah, but yet the people around him don't seem to always understand that. And he's crying out to be healed, to be given sight. And are we crying out to Jesus that he would heal us, that he would heal us of our sin, and that he would give us sight to see who he is rightly and to understand this world rightly? I think as you go through this passage, and when we read any kind of scripture, we should always be asking, who am I in this passage? Well, obviously we're not going to be Jesus, so that leaves we're either the crowd around Jesus or we're Bartimaeus. If we're the crowd, how are we getting in the way of others who need to see Jesus? How are we just focused on our own comfort, right? And enjoying hanging out rather than encouraging people to grow in faith? If we're Bartimaeus, then, maybe the question is, how are we blind? How are we a beggar when it comes to Christ? What does that mean for our spiritual life? Now, Jesus asked him, what would you have me do for you? He asked Jesus for sight, and quite honestly, for spiritual growth. And I would say to you, what are you asking God to do for you that's in line with God's will? And so he says to Bartimaeus, Jesus says, your faith has healed you. Your trust in God, your trust that I am God's son and that I'm the Messiah has healed you. And so do we trust God to work in our lives? Well, after this, as Mark always says, immediately the man sprang up and followed Jesus along the way. And after we're healed, if we hear the word, do we follow along? Well, have a blessed day, my friends.